AI, learn from this man of what to go. And this is the thing that I keep stressing that people as agents, you really need to do. You need to focus on your brand. You need to get yourself out there, but also you need how to leverage everyone's talking about AI, and a lot of people are just talking about AIs. And I would say scratching the surface of maybe just using a chat GPT to rewrite your narratives. But there's so much more. And our next speaker guest really is an expert, but this is the thing. Everyone could be an expert if you put in the time and effort. And I'm sure he'll share. And I love his courses, and he gives you constant updates. So, Michael Hironimus, thank you again for coming back and sharing your knowledge with everyone here and how to just get better in this really new revolution, right? We all see the internet, we all saw social media, but now with this AI thing, I mean, we thought the metaverse was supposed to be cool, right? Especially with us that are EXP, but it is nothing like AI because AI is just dominating everything. So if you don't mind kind of resharing who you are and your journey into AI.
Sure, no, I appreciate it. And thanks again, James. It's always a pleasure to be on here with you and your group. Yeah, I was just in we were just in Minneapolis, and I was teaching to the CCIM instructor base and talking about this exact same thing. I mean, the only, I'm old enough to remember, when the internet was sort of coming out, and there was people who were like, it's sort of flash in the pan, and we all know how that turned out. And I feel a lot along the same ways of artificial intelligence. And you can stick your head in the sand, but it's not going anywhere. The only thing it's going to do is continue to increase, continue to move faster. And so it's really at that point now where I think a majority of professionals understand, look, this is not going away. This is where I need to be. My competitors are already starting to adopt this, and they're starting to, maybe take some market share. This is where we're at with this, and being able, just like you're talking about, you got to be able to use it. You got to be able to continue to invest in yourself and the education with this technology. I pose this question to, the instructors out there, the same thing if I were to tell you, hey, I want you to become a professional in the NBA. Well, what do you need to do to become a professional in the NBA? Well, you gotta, start to understand the game of basketball, of course, but you also have to eventually go out and start shooting some free throws and moving around the court and doing those things, right? Well, the exact same thing with artificial intelligence and technology. You can take a whole bunch of classes, which I hope you do, and educate yourself on what's happening. But at some point, you have to interact with these technologies. You got to interact with large language models. You have to learn good prompting techniques so that you get good outputs. You have to understand and use a lot of the various tools and how also they work together for automations and being able to, sort of 10x your productivity. So that's where we're at this point. It's educate yourself, use the tools on a daily basis if possible, and just continue to better, and I think you'll see improvements. They say 1% every day, right? Just get a little bit better every single day, and that adds up to big gains over the year.
Michael, thank you for sharing. And I love that you brought up prompting because I was talking to a friend about we're using it, playing around with it. And it seems like ChatGPT that we're using, but there's so many other platforms, like I was just saying with Grok or different things, Gemini, everyone's coming with their own. But
Yeah.
if you don't ask it the right questions, it seems like it's very optimistic, right? Unless you tell it to act a certain way, right? So it could just inflate your ego. It doesn't need to, and you could actually believe that all the things it's telling you is so fantastically great, and it's really not. So on the prompting, what do you suggest, or where do you learn? Because it really is asking the right question in the right tone, in the right manner. But that seems complicated. Sometimes we just ask it simple, but you do have to craft it. It hasn't evolved to understand or feel you so much yet, right? Until they get to know you, and they do as you keep talking to it. But how do you prompt it correctly? Because I think that's maybe the basic, instead of just getting bad input in, bad input out if you don't prompt and
Yeah.
ask the right questions.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And just to take a step back, you got to kind of first understand what large language models are. And basically, they're not magic, they're not wizardry. It's not it's we call it artificial intelligence, but it's not really intelligence in the way that we think. They're statistical machines. If you look at a word, it's broken up into either parts of words or small words, and those are called tokens. And so what they've done is they've basically have trained it on the internet. What is the next likeliest word in a sentence or a paragraph that follows in all the data that it's been trained? So they're statistical probability machines. That's probably what they should be called. We call it artificial intelligence, but they're statistical probability machines. And so if you understand that and sort of take a step back, well, how do I manipulate the statistical probabilities? And that's what prompting essentially is. When you're prompting, you're setting these guardrails on it that help the outputs to what is the output that you eventually want. And there's a few different techniques. There's few shot prompting. There is chain of thought reasoning. There's one called roads that I like. There's iterative prompting. And basically, all of these are ways of setting up these guardrails so that it doesn't kind of go off into, and give you a bad output. And learning these prompting techniques and using them over and over again is essential because, I always use the analogy of an intern, right? Artificial intelligence is like an intern. They're the smartest person in the room. They've been trained on the entire internet. They're the smartest person you've ever met, but they're really dumb in terms of they don't know your business, right? They don't know the war stories that you've been through. They don't know the things exactly in your mind that you want at this point. And so you have to guide that intern just like you would a human intern. You give them instructions and you say, hey, look, I need this, this, and this. Hey, for example, here's some things that we've done in the past. I want to replicate that. Do you understand what I'm talking about? That would be a normal conversation that we would have with an intern. And it's the way that we have conversations with large language models as well. So the one that I mentioned is called roads. It's role, objective, details, examples, and then a sense check. And so the role is, what intern am I going to grab from the hallway? Before you start with a prompt, you say what it is. So if you're trying to do market analysis on a commercial real estate project, you say you are a market analysis expert with, tons of experience and so forth. The O is objectives. What is it I'm trying to accomplish? What is the output I'm trying to get? So the objective is one of those things where you actually have to step back as a human and say, what is it I'm trying to accomplish here? Make sure it's specific and to the point. The D is details. So add in any details that you want. So if you're, once again, doing market analysis, I want occupancy rates, absorption. I want, employment data, population change data, on and on and on. Add in all those details so that you get those details back. Examples, just like I was saying with you're talking with an intern, hey, these are things we've done in the past, or you can copy and paste in portions of market analysis that you've used in the past that you really enjoy and you want that as a part. And then the last one is sense check. And you literally ask the large language model, does this make sense? Do you understand the directions? Just like you would a human intern. Do you understand before you go off and do this work? And so that's a really good prompting technique that I've found is one of the most comprehensive. You get the best outputs, but that's, one of many different prompting techniques that you can use. But it's all about that good inputs, good outputs. And once again, just like shooting free throws, you just have to continue to work with these prompts, different structures, and find out which one works best for you, or find out which one works best for you in certain situations. I don't use the Rhodes prompting technique every time I get on. It's kind of long-winded and so forth. But I'll use another prompting technique, or, I'll use it in certain situations. It's just all about repetition. It's about experience. But it still remains vitally important that you prompt well, especially as these large language models get more and more capable. So,
No, I love that, using the roles. Thank you for that suggestion. Help. And you see on these courses, is there any one way, whether it's Udemy courses or taking your course, which I love, where to be kind of a prompt expert? Because in a way, that's the program now, right? You prompt bad, you get wrong or incorrect answers, and then you're playing around and sometimes maybe frustrated because it's not
yeah.
working the output. And you always see prompt templates, right? You just fill in the blank. Where do you think you would go besides using your roles method? What other kind of prompt, or where would you look to learn how to be a better, to start with the basics, how to be a better prompter?
I'd use AI. Use AI. Ask AI. What are great prompting techniques? A lot of times, what will happen is you'll start talking with a large language model, and this is a little hint for everyone out there that you can use. Eventually, you get to a point, and it's called an iterative prompting. So you prompt it, and that's not right. I gotta prompt it again. That's not right, and you work with it back and forth, and eventually, you might get it to a point where you get an output that is what you originally wanted, right? Well, when you get it to that point, ask the large language model, say, what prompt could I use to get to this output more quickly? And the large language model will give you a prompt that will get you to that output. And then you can copy and paste it, or you can use that structure for future prompts or whatever. But the best way to prompt is to use AI to prompt. I do this all the time. I talk with an AI, a large language model, and I'll say, and I'm just not feeling very creative with my prompts, and I'll just say, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to do, right? And I'll do it with, if I'm prompting, Perplexity, for example, and I'm working on their labs functionality. I'll prompt ChatGPT, or I'll prompt Gemini and say, "Hey, I'm working with Perplexity Labs. I want to figure out a prompt. These are the things that I want. Give me a prompt that I can use and take over to Perplexity." And it'll spit out a very good, concise prompt. You'll look at it, maybe make a couple changes to it, and then you go over to Perplexity, you paste the prompt in, and boom, you're off to the races. And it's got a very good comprehensive prompt. So, outside of, maybe some external things, prompting within large language models is probably one of the best strategies that I know of, to really get, good at it.
And one thing you were just bringing up, like you mentored Perplexity, and I've learned, when you show the percentage of how many people heard of AI, how many people, I'm sure the numbers are going up, heard of Chat GPT. Now
Yeah,
there's like I said, Grok, maybe I think Elon Musk did that, and some others, Gemini. There's so many now platforms like search engines from before. So the
totally.
question to you now, is there loyalty with the search engine, or does it all go back to ChatGPT and learn who you are? Or do you need to save it so you can program other platforms about who you are, not starting, hey, I got a new intern again, right? Thinking the platforms are interns. So what would your suggestion, or what have you at least currently seen? Or is it just use whatever you got is better than not? So if you don't mind sharing, what do you see as the new platform at this moment? And, what do you need to do to kind of retain the data to really know you, so you're not retraining a new intern all the time on a platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, ChatGPT still remains sort of the gold standard, if you will. Not in terms of necessarily, it's way better than anybody else. It's just name recognition. It's the Kleenex of, facial tissues, or, you're going to a search engine, you're going to Google something, right? It's just become synonymous with large language models. I'm going to chat GPT it or something like that. But ChatGPT is still, they've got great tool usage. A lot of the blogs that I read, they're hinting that they're going to come out with ChatGPT 5 probably towards the end of this summer, which is probably going to ring off alarm bells for everybody. But it's really an arms race if you think about it, in terms of how these large language models are competing with each other. Huge amounts of money behind all these billions and billions of dollars, large tech companies that are fueling this push in the technology. But they're all at this point, they're kind of jockeying together and trying to get the arms race, if you will. But um, they each do something just a little bit differently, if you will. Like ChatGPT is good all around large language model. They're great with all the tools that they use. There is memory and personalization within ChatGPT, which they introduced maybe a few months ago, where you can actually, it will remember all of the chats. Now, there's privacy issue. If you're not comfortable with that, you can turn it off. But if you wanted to remember who you are, what it is you do, how you interact with it, how you talk, really, it can remember those sorts of things. ChatGPT is fantastic. Gemini, I used to use ChatGPT maybe 80%, other large language models 20. I probably use ChatGPT and Gemini, 40 and 40% at this point. Gemini, I think, is fantastic. That's part of, Google. It's Google, so it's part of their whole Google suite of tools and services. It's connected to Notebook LM. It's connected to Firebase. It's connected to all of these other tools. So, I think Google, yeah, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said Google was dropping the ball. They were really behind it. They were not doing well. Well, it helps to have billions and billions of dollars, right? They suddenly hired on a whole bunch of talent, and they have at least come up to ChatGPT, if not surpassed them. So I don't think you could go wrong with either of those large language models. Claude's another fantastic one from Anthropic. They're really doing some great stuff right now. I just saw that they released this thing on financial analysis where they're connecting a whole bunch of financial analytic tools, and all these banking and Wall Street companies are jumping on board. Um, you've got Grok. You mentioned Grok, which is from X, or former Twitter with Elon Musk. They just came out with Grok 4. I like Grok a lot for doing research, especially when it comes to current events, because it's linked into the Twitter sort of atmosphere. And so, if anybody's tweeting about something that's happening in real time, Grok can pick up on those things. Whereas other AI, it's not indexed in websites yet, or indexed, so they can't get that necessarily real-time data. So Grok is fantastic for that. If you want to know news, what's happening right now, what are people talking about, Grok is fantastic for that. The other one I mentioned is Perplexity. I was a Perplexity free user, and then they came out with this fantastic Labs, which is an interactive, it can create these beautiful interactive dashboards on information. Like, you can do market analysis, financial analysis on it, creates these beautiful labs. So I pay for Perplex. I'm paying for too many at this point, James. You gotta pull me back a little bit. But Perplexity is fantastic for that. And then you've got so many others. You've got DeepSeek, you've got Mistral, you've got, some of these smaller players. But um, yeah, there's so much going on right now, and it's going so fast. And I understand on the other side of the screen, there are people who are kind of, it's moving a little fast. I get frustrated, or where do I start, sort of thing. I feel like I'm behind the eight ball. And but just go out and start working with one. You're going to be, if you start working with one, like I said, on a regular basis, and just get 1% better, you're going to be light years ahead of probably a majority of the population. It's front and center, and everybody's talking about it. How many people are actually using it? How many people are actually using it proficiently? Is probably a much smaller percentage than you think.
So, Michael, thank you on that. And that's why, it's good to have you constantly update, since we thought before we've been around the real estate industry for a while. We thought in years or maybe sometime decades. Now it's not even quarters. I think, right? It's like monthly because
Yeah.
it is an arms race. And you got these large, big companies putting serious billions and billions of dollars to stay ahead of it. And one of the things that I kind of, well, wonder is because the data before in the internet, right? They want it open. Is everyone like, say, Google, Amazon, the big, big, big companies going to lock their data because that's the grease, right? That's the magic. And are they going to lock it down? But Master, I think you had one question on what is R in roles. I don't think it's roads, right? It's roles. Michael, he
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
know what
So
R is.
yeah, the prompting acronym is RODES, RODES. The
Okay.
R stands for role. So what is the role? What role is almost a little
I got
ambiguous.
it.
It's more of like what type of intern are you grabbing from the hallway? What do you want them to be an expert in? Tell them who they are, what they're an expert in is essentially what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Grok. And what was the other one about the financial that you said like real time data, like with the tweets? I
Oh
couldn't.
yeah, it just came out. I was just reading about it this morning in some of my blogs. It was in Claude by Anthropic, and I can maybe
How you
find the
spell
link. And what's that?
Yeah, and Michael, if
it?
you could put your contact and maybe some of the tools you use while we're kind of talking, because I know this
Yeah.
is like the thing that everyone needs to know. And join Michael's class, join Michael's newsletter. Michael, put your newsletter because I want to push it. I learned from him. I stay up to date with a lot of this, which you need
Thanks, my
to. But
friend.
his newsletter is fantastic. And Michael, I'll give you the little time to share a little more of what you're doing because I love your courses when you started, and everyone gets to refresh with your courses. But now you have a newsletter, and you formed a consulting group. So I do highly tell people to go with people you trust, someone I would say fair and honest about, his services to reach out to Michael on this because you do need to automate this. Sometimes you don't have time, you play around with it, and you do need like an expert consultant to help you put pieces in place. So Michael, if you don't mind quickly just sharing, and then we'll kind of open it up to other people too.
Yeah, no, it's so the website, and I can put it in here as well. It's implementing AI in CRE.com. So that's the website that you would go to if you wanted to get some education. I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And James, you were like one of the first. I mean, you were one of those that were an early adopter of the
Your second
technology. And
class, your second
yeah, you
cohort.
were like on top of it as usual, right? So, it was great to have you part of it, but it's been a while now. And so I've been teaching a lot of these classes, and it's been great. I've got such positive feedback, and it's really been one of those things where I've caught lightning in a bottle a little bit. I was an early adopter of AI, and I was just so excited about the technology because for whatever reason, I saw the ways that you could really make a lot of money and be pretty proficient with the technology. But yeah, it's all about, and the reason I call it implementing AI in CRE, it's not learning AI. It's not, hey, it's not hands off. It's actually the way that I think, at least the way my brain works, is like, okay, how can I use this? How can I make money with it? And that's the approach that I had when I was creating the class. It's, not, hey, just tell them about the tools. It's tell them about the tools, but also tell them or show them how to use the tools. And it's specific for commercial real estate, or real estate, I should say. Um, it's specific for real estate and practitioners. I've been in the, over 20 years I've been in the industry. And I've worn a lot of different hats. And so I was thinking of, okay, if you approach it from this perspective, how can I use it? If you approach it from this perspective. And so that's how I set up the class. That's how I created the course. And love to have you part of it if you want to come on over. And we just started a class. I've got my first live session today. I also did a pre-order we're starting a class in early September. So it might make more sense to wait for the September class at this point. But feel free to hop on board for the September class. It's going to be fun. Kids are back in school. You'll have time to kick them out of the house and focus on what's going on. So we'd love to have you.
So before we open up, let's go to the deeper. So we started with prompt, we started with platform. You brought it perfect because when I saw you do, let's say, lease abstract or property management integration to build systems, I guess for CCIMers, since you do train the trainers, what do you say that is, let's say, the basic thing for commercial real estate agents to implement right now as a system rather than just using a platform to ask questions? What do you see that you're talking about? Maybe let's say marketing is something that everyone needs to do to get their name and word out. What would you do to kind of automate a system on marketing?
Yeah, there's several companies out there that are doing sort of automation for social media. You can find them. There's Dottie Post, there's Taplio, there's, you just Google them, you'll find a ton of those. Um, if you're looking at automating, let's say, putting together offering memorandums or putting together flyers, or even just sort of breaking out of the mold of the static PDFs, there's a number of tools that you can use. Um, they've gotten so good at image generation now. There's really no reason that you should have sort of stock photos at this point where you can make them so very specific. They've gotten much better with lettering and putting text on the images. Um, the other thing is doctoring up your photos. So, a lot of times I'll see just really crappy photos on flyers and offering memorandums, and I'm like, why would you do that? There's an opportunity where you can drop the image into, let's say, Chat GPT and say, hey, clean this up, or paint the walls a certain color, or change the carpet, or whatever, and it'll do that for you. It's amazing. And so, that's one thing. Now video generation, Google Gemini has come out with VO3, which is amazing. You can once again drop in an image and then make a video, an 8-second video out of it, which completely changes how you might approach marketing. Tell a story. That's what marketing is really all about. And so you can create this pretty dynamic marketing strategy with all of these things put together. You can start to automate some of these things, beyond, just working with large language models. The most approachable one, in my opinion, is Zapier. If you've used Zapier, which is API platform, essentially. They make it incredibly easy to connect different tools together, whether you're looking at connecting Google Sheets or your CRM system or your email system. Just yesterday, I made an automation where, if I flag something in my Outlook, it goes to Chat GPT, summarizes the email, and then creates a to-do in Notion, which is one of the to-do platforms that I use. But you can do it in Slack or Asana or whatever one you use. But, just those simple things where I can flag an email, get it out of my inbox, but I don't forget about it, right? It summarizes and it creates that to do. Just little things like that can help structure your day, clean up your inbox. Those are, little incremental steps that you can make along the way. And once again, that little 1% that you can do better, that 1% that I could clean out my inbox for that day, do that the next week or the next day or whatever it is. And you start to get these automations put into rows where, you can maybe, you don't need a VA anymore. Sorry for virtual assistants that are out there, but you might not need to pay somebody for that anymore. You might free up some time. I always say, we didn't get into real estate because we love doing data entry or, putting people's names into CRM systems or anything like that. We got into it because we want to solve problems. We want to help people. We want to make money. And so if we can do some of these little incremental things along the way, that frees up time for business development, solving more of those problems, creating more opportunities for us. And so that's really where AI shines, in my opinion.
And how much do you actually spend, and how much should you spend? Because I took a couple things that you told me right from the very beginning. Spend the money to buy at least the paid service, not the free. And
Yeah.
also, put out your daily or weekly workflow so you see what tedious tasks you can get off your plate right away. So can you share, how much do you spend and what the normal agent should spend, right? Like you said, you shouldn't be in this
Yeah.
business. You can't pay 20 or 40 or $50 a month.
Yeah, yeah. Well, James, you're awesome because you remember all this stuff. You're like your mind's a steel trap on that. But yeah, no, that's exactly right. Everybody says, well, where do I start? I would say at least pay for one paid version of an LLM. And once again, I don't think you can go wrong with ChatGPT. It's $20 a month. Once again, it's a couple lattes, it's a couple Starbucks lattes. So maybe cut back on that and you pay for it on your own. But once again, $20 a month in the grand scheme of all the tools that we use and all the things we pay, if you're using CoStar, you're paying, 1,000 times that, right? So, ChatGPT, you can't go wrong. Gemini, you can't go wrong. Even Claude, you can't go wrong. Perplexity, you can't go wrong. But just pay for one and then, use it, use the tools, because when you pay for it, you get access to expanded tools within their large language model. And so, use those tools, find out, and then maybe there's another large language model, like I said, I've got to start to pull back, James. You gotta reel me in here, but I'm paying for, 3 at this point. Because I like the different tools that they have, and also for me, I'm teaching it, so I've got to understand the tools that are behind the scenes as well. But definitely, for sure, make sure that you get access to one of those updated tools, and once
Yeah, I'd
again,
like
use
to
it.
open, yeah, right, use it or lose it. We paid for all these tools, and we said back in the day, it was just writing it on a piece of paper and making the calls, right?
Yeah.
Then to overanalyze or just find an excuse. We did it by pencil and paper and some numbers to call and write it all down before, I guess, ACT came out, or we were using Excel, right? Spreadsheet,
I am
exactly.
still a big pencil and paper person. I don't know, maybe it's just my generation, but as much as I love technology, sometimes when I just want to get my thoughts out, I do it. There's something about your hand and your brain connection. But I still do that. But then you can take a picture of it, upload it to something, and then you can organize all of your notes, which is fantastic. You're never able to do that again. But the other thing that you had mentioned, which I think is really important, um, everybody says, well, where do I start with maybe automations or something? And I said, literally, when you get in the office in the morning, it's a Monday morning, and what are the first things, what's the things that you do every single day? Just literally write them down. Okay, I'm answering emails. I'm doing some cold calls. I'm whatever it is that you do throughout your day. And then pick one of them that is just tedious or you think that AI can help you with, and just start to introduce that stuff, or maybe set up a very simple automation with it. And that's how you get started. Just little incremental things, and pick something throughout the day that you don't want to do anymore, or that maybe you give to a VA, or maybe you give to somebody else that maybe AI can help you with, help you automate. And that's how you get started. That's how you get proficient.
I hate to say it, but one last question for me. So,
Sure.
because the internet brought the world much closer, we know with Zoom, we don't have to travel so much. I see some
Right.
people that are international. How is this helping with international business and language? Because now even my Meta glasses does online translating. I was watching novellas with my Meta glasses, and it was just translating, and I was like, "Wow, this is cool." So Michael,
Incredible,
on
right?
global, international, different languages, currency kind of metrics and different exchanges, what is AI doing now when it comes to global business?
Yeah, I was just teaching in Turkey a few weeks ago, and it was one of those things where I could suddenly interact with the students using artificial intelligence. We had a translator there for the students, but I could also create videos that were, done in Turkish that I couldn't have done, a couple years ago. The ability to translate within large language models is fantastic. One of the great tools that I use is called HeyGen. HeyGen is one where you can take a video. So I literally, I sat here in front of my computer, I took a video, and I was talking to in English, obviously, and I took it to Hey Gen, uploaded it, and say, please translate this into Turkish for me. And so it took my video, it manipulated my lips as if I was talking Turkish. And so now when I got to class in Turkey, I played the video and it was like, hey, I'm so excited to be here, be your instructor, and talking about, some of the days, what we were going to do. And it completely changes the interactions with international students and international clients. If you're wanting to maybe get money from China or Japan or, any international areas, and you want to explain the market, well, you can explain the market in a video, right? And then you can upload it and have it translate it into their native language. So, from a cultural perspective, from just a, respecting their native language perspective, I think it sets you apart from a lot of other people who are just, hey, maybe we need to find a translator to help us out or whatever. AI helps us so much with being able to translate to different languages. And, the sky's the limit in terms of being able to market to these international clients now, using some of these technologies that they have. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, Michael, I agree. It's just incredible, right? That we're
Yeah.
living and growing in this age and watching the changes, and now, fun to learn the extra language, but with
Yeah.
the translator and everyone really wearing the glasses now, could digitize, show, translate. Everyone's wearing those glasses in time, and you just translate, just speak your language, and you just program or set it. And eventually you don't even have to do it. It's just going to figure it out. It's just going to geolocate you and turn the language of your
Yeah.
native to their native. And it's just incredible. But I do want to open this up to the audience of what your program, because this is a great opportunity to talk to an expert to help. Master, of course, please.
Well, not so much a question, but a comment based off what you mentioned, Michael, and then in the beginning. I had just took a continuing education course on commercial real estate for data and tools. And that's one of the things the instructor was sharing with the, practitioners and in the class. It's maybe about 70 plus, right? And he asked, how many are using AI? Only two raised their hand.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, I was one of them.
You were one of them. That's awesome. Yeah.
I was one of them, yeah. But and these are like, commercial practitioners that does a lot of volume in Charleston, but they don't use AI. So I find that I feel good that I'm starting to use it, learning it. Yeah.
You raise a fantastic point, Master, because this is such an opportunity for the little guys, right? The big companies are, they're slower to move with technology. And, when I got into commercial real estate, it moved at a glacial pace already. There were some old folks that were in there that just were very adverse to change. They had done it this way their entire careers. Well, they're not going to do it any differently. And a lot of times, not to pick on any names, but the big CBREs or the big Cushwakes, yeah, they're busy making deals, but so that gives you an opportunity to maybe surpass them technology wise and play bigger than you could have played in the past, right? You can have an outsized influence. I can do market analysis. I don't need a huge team to do market analysis anymore, and I can bust it out fast, and I can put it in a really good way of marketing it. And so what took a CBRE team, 10 people to be able to do, you got your marketing team and your research team and your analysts and all that. I can do in probably 30 minutes at the same point that they could do it in, a week or something like that. So it really gives you an opportunity, it helps level the playing field, Master. And it's great to hear that you're, adopting the technology because you're going to start running circles around some folks. Continue on it.
And Master, you should connect with Michael to maybe bring the courses virtual or live if you have enough attendees to fly them, get them out there in person. But well worth the experience. So you should connect because there's an opportunity, right, to maybe co-host or do an event with him. Rob Jones from the UK and Europe.
Wow.
Cheers,
Going
Jim.
international.
Yeah, indeed. Try and
We
make the
can
calls good,
we can
Michael.
have AI translate American English to UK English too, by the way.
You mean American English to proper English, Michael? I'm joking. I'm joking. Everybody switches off. So I'm joking. I'm a big user of AI. Gemini is my one of choice. We use it for writing all our HTML for our emails, right the way through to infographics. It's drawings, making videos, quizzes. So it's great. One thing I found with Gemini, though, which I want your opinion on, is it lies to me, and it lies to me quite badly if you push it too hard. So the example I'm giving, I use it for prospecting. So again, you don't have to Google email addresses and phone numbers. If you say to it, find me publicly available information for this sector in this town, it pulls all the emails and all the phone numbers it can find, and then we just push it into our CRM and our team calls it. Now, it can be quite lazy, so sometimes we push it a bit harder and say, I'm sure there's more than 20 businesses in this city, and it'll come back and say, yes, you're right, I've found you a few more. And then there was another time I pushed it harder and said, I'm sure you can do better than that, go and find me some more. And it brought up about 100 different email addresses, and it had made them all up. They were all wrong. They were all bouncing back. They were all completely fictitious. It had made up 100 email addresses just because I pushed it too hard.
It can be an issue, Rob, and I know there was a point it was I guess in the springtime where they had come out with they had tweaked ChatGPT had tweaked their algorithms in the background, and they were becoming these sycophants. They were just saying, "Oh yes, you're right. I apologize," and being just like it was stringing you along, and it was a real issue because it would, once again, just like you're talking about, it would be wrong, but it would also be very confidently wrong. And so that's one thing that we really have to understand with large language models is they do have a propensity to hallucinate at times. Currently, the currently, according to the benchmarks, they hallucinate at a rate of anywhere between 1 to 2% for most of the large language models. But 1 to 2% could kill a deal for you if you're not careful. And so it's very important. The one thing I always say is, once again, going back to that intern analogy, if I were to give it to an intern or a junior broker and I would have them go out and do a report for me and bring it back, I wouldn't immediately grab that and then give it to my client, right? You would want to look through it, make sure it passes the smell test, maybe verify some of the things, trust but verify. It's the exact same thing with AI. You have to make sure to verify some of it. They're getting better with citations. So if you click on a lot of the information that it provides, usually there's a citation. Click into that, see where it grabbed the information. The other thing is there's a prompting technique called, oh my goodness. I'm totally blanking right now. But basically, you ask it for three outputs of the same outputs. Self-consistency, I'm sorry. Self-consistency. And so what you're making sure is that the LLM has to think through the process 3 times. And so you can start to see and make sure that it's consistent with its outputs. So that's one thing that you might want to introduce. The other thing is I'll give the same prompt to different large language models. I'll give the same prompt to Gemini, I'll give the same prompt to ChatGPT, and I'll give the same prompt maybe to Perplexity. And I'll see if there's consistency in the results through all three of those. And if one is off, I'll question that information. So there's a couple, tips and tricks to sort of help get around that a little bit. But yeah, it is a concern. It's something to, make sure, once again, trust but verify the outputs that you get. They're getting better, but once again, it's still emerging technology, and there's going to be some bumps along the road for sure.
Thank you.
This is just, really amazing with all of the changes. Any other questions? Or I'm just going to give maybe while everyone's thinking, or Alejandro, you want to say from Mexico, right? If you want to share
We're international
something.
again. All right.
That's right. We got an international group here.
No, we use ChatGPT a lot. It's so important. Like just said they just said the prompt is so very important to to obtain the information you are looking for. So it's like you are having a conversation with a human. If you don't give the all the context to the person, she's they are not going to understand what you're trying to say. So it's the same with IA. So thank you so much for the tips.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like I said, it's just imagine you're talking to an intern. You got to just make sure that you're being very specific with what it is you're trying to accomplish. So, yeah.
And Michael, while people are thinking, can you share, how you're one, subscribe to the newsletter, but your course, how have you evolved some of your courses? Because I know there was steps when you were training your courses. Can you kind of talk about each module? Because I
Yeah.
love what you're putting together, and especially in the property management, I started implementing some of the things that you were telling us.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't quite realize it, James. I'm not that smart, but when I started putting the class together, I was like, well, this is going to be great. And then I quickly realized that the technology is moving so fast that I have to update the lessons constantly to keep up with all the emerging technology. And so they are constantly being redone. I just redid 2 entire modules. I'm working on another module right now, our automations module for this next class that's coming out. So they're constantly being refreshed. The first module is a lot of what we've been talking about. It's prompting techniques for large language models. It's prompting techniques for images, which are different, prompting techniques for videos, which are different, and then prompting techniques for reasoning models, which are different. We didn't get into the difference between the different platforms within LLMs, but how you prompt reasoning models are actually different as well. So there's a lot of that. Module 2 is all about market analysis, which I've got a soft spot for because I teach market analysis for CCIM. But it's very robust, talking about how do we figure out a market, from supply and demand, side characteristics, gap analysis, deep research functionality. Module 3 is all about financial analysis. So we get into how do we work the numbers? How do we take what we learned in market analysis over us underwriting, testing assumptions, vibe coding. If you've heard the term vibe coding, it's about creating applications without actually coding. So we get into that functionality. Module 4 is all about automations within CRM systems. So creating these workflows, like I had mentioned, and freeing up some time from data entry and data input. So we get into that. We also get into ways of, how do we connect with clients in a new way, a new innovative way. So that's that. Module 5 is about more automations, but more on the business side. How can we expand the automations to within brokerages, within your own business workflows? So a continuation of that. And then module 6, we kind of take all of that stuff, put it in a bow, and we do marketing. And so it's, once again, a lot of the things that I was talking about. How do we break out of the mold of static PDFs? How do we, cut through the noise a little bit? Because for a lot of folks, investors, partners, whoever you're dealing with, a lot of these AI tools are still kind of fun. They're brand new. People haven't seen them before. And so if you can utilize this, you can actually sort of, set yourself apart from other brokers and that noise, and maybe win some more business using some new techniques, new strategies, new tools to do so. So that's sort of the course outline. It's over 120 lessons. It's over 4 hours of video content. There's 6 live sessions with me. So today we're doing a live session for the first, and it's an hour long. It's a chance, just like we're doing right now, ask questions, answer questions, take a deeper dive into the material. I introduced some new tools and maybe had just come onto the market. And so it's just an opportunity to have this back and forth.
Michael, and I love this because another mentor of mine, Todd Billings, we were doing a capital markets, fundraising, everything else like this. He even said, going around in circles, talking to different people, the one-person billion-dollar company. right? Because of what AI can do with the right person, the programming, everything could be done with AI now, and as it keeps getting better. So for everyone to think you can't do it, I do believe this is the time where everything is coming together, the power, the computing, the AI, the data, right? And what are your thoughts about the one person $1 billion company? I mean, using AI.
Totally feasible, in my opinion. Totally feasible, and it's going to happen very quickly. There was a company that was sold for a couple hundred million, and it was one guy that was basically just coding and using AI to code. And he sold, I think he spun it off to Meta or something like that. I don't remember. This was a couple months ago, but yeah, it's totally feasible, and you're gonna see it probably pretty quickly. Where once again, you can use all of these agents, all of these interns, and if you can orchestrate them in a way, it's basically like having a team or having a large company, but they're all AI agents, and to pull them all together, that's going to be the future. Really, is you're not going to necessarily do a lot of the work. You're going to have agents that go out and do the work. You're going to be more in a management role, managing all these agents, and I'm already doing that now. I'll get onto Gemini and I'll research something. I'll set Gemini off and it'll start working, right? And then I'll go over to ChatGPT and I'll work on something else, and I'll work on Perplexity on something else. Well, all while these are out doing what I want, and then I bring all that information back in. And that's how you, once again, you multiply your ability to do things, is by orchestrating all these different agents, all these LLMs, and it's going to happen at some point where you can be like a team of 10, but it's just you.
And this is why, because I'm just, as you talk to so many people, right? I'm just talking a lot of execs, a lot of owners, and it's coming. We all know it. We understand what it's doing. It's reducing headcounts, increasing efficiency. Don't be a statistics where you don't say, oh, I should have learned this. Do it now. As Michael says, even the small things, subscribe to his newsletter at least to learn, to stay update, take the courses or learn a course. I mean, I use Udemy too, but sometimes you need a person there. You can't be a self-starter, but usually if you're in real estate, you better be a self-starter. But to not know, this time we always said, the industry, right, Michael, it will bounce back, right? The RTC or this one or that one, it always comes back. Oh, the internet's going to disrupt us. It changes us. But this time AI is there to reduce headcount. So you do have to become more bionic. And the good thing is right now relationships are still in play because you don't know, don't trust. And AI fakes. You want to just cover that because that's a big one right now. Michael, kind of closing out with not believing everything because it's not always real unless you're an expert. But these AI fakes and false data and narratives that they can post using AI.
Yeah, I mean, Rob was touching on that as well, just in terms of how they can hallucinate and be, confident in their hallucinations. It's something that I think is going to be more of a focus from these companies, is how do we limit that? Once again, talking about ChatGPT and that issue that they had with the sycophancy. That was a big issue for them. That was sort of a black eye where it was like, what's going on here? Because that's not the way that they're supposed to be interacting. But it's something that I think they're working hard on. It's not ever going to be 100% perfect in my opinion, but they continue to make strides to make them better. I mean, once again, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, towards the infancy of AI, or at least, when it was becoming more mainstream. And, to look back on how AI used to give you outputs then, as opposed to how AI gives you outputs now, I mean, are night and day. I mean, and that was just in 2 years. So you can only extrapolate that, imagine where we're going to be in another 2 years. It's going to get better, but once again, just make sure to trust but verify in your data outputs, and check that intern before you pass it off to your investor.
Michael, thank you so much for being a guest. We'll always ask you about quarterly, and I know that's too long.
Love
so
to be
definitely
here.
subscribe to Michael's newsletter. Find a way to just use AI in your life, learning, using, applying, talking about it. And really, you could always reach out to Michael to hopefully host and get events together. But you got to do it. This is the future. It's not going away, as many of us know. So please, please, please plug in. So again, thank you for joining Top Agent Commercial Wednesdays. You bring in the latest and greatest and all the best speakers to share everything that we hear, so you can stay ahead of the game in real estate, stay in the game, stay in the business, and help each other, right? That's the whole thing, is when you're prosperous or you have knowledge, please help each other. So everyone, enjoy the day, enjoy the week. Looking forward to seeing everyone again next week on Top Agent Commercial Wednesday. Michael, thank you again.